The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Suzanne Morphew was reported missing on Mother's Day 5 years ago. Law enforcement has never stopped working to obtain justice.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back.
We believe that she's not alive.
After more than 3 years, the remains of Suzanne Morphew had been found.
The grand jury has indicted Barry Morphew on the single count of murder in the first degree.
Bombshell new developments this morning, years after murder charges were dropped. Barry Morphew has now been arrested again in connection to his wife Suzanne's murder. So the big question, will the new charges stick? Plus, we're spotlighting Suzanne Morphew and the Morphew children. Will the daughters continue standing by their dad? Also this hour, reaction rolling in after Karen Reed's verdict. Special prosecutor Hank Brennan breaks his silence this morning, and you'll hear it first here on Court TV. Plus, a baby-faced drug mule? Sean Diddy Combs' his personal assistant testifying about the shady tasks he says he performed for the famous rapper. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. We planned a wonderful show for you to start off your work week. So grab that cup of coffee or tea or whatever you like in the morning, or if you're across the pond and it's lunchtime and you're watching, well then grab your beverage. It's time for my opening statement. As Benjamin Franklin famously said, it is better 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer. That is part of what makes our justice system the greatest in the world. Our system protects the rights of the accused. Karen Reed got a fair trial, and that's the way it should be. Now let's be clear, a not guilty finding is legally not the same as a declaration of innocence. Not guilty means that the jurors, for whatever their reasons, did not find evidence existed to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Do I think they got it right? No. But do I respect the verdict? Yes. To me, the most important question that everyone should be asking after this trial ended is, did John O'Keefe get justice? Was acquitting Karen Reed justice for his death? If you think her acquittal means a new investigation is going to be launched to search for the real killer and prosecute them, think again. That's not going to happen. The quest for justice for John O'Keefe happened in criminal court, and it ended with that verdict. Justice in civil court for John O'Keefe is a whole nother story. But in the meantime, only Karen Reed knows with 100% certainty whether she hit and killed John O'Keefe. I imagine that if the jury arrived at the right decision, that she did not hit and kill him, then Karen Reed must be sleeping like a baby at night. But if the jury got it wrong, and their verdict does not align with the truth of what happened, I would imagine it will be torturous for Karen Reed in the future, because living with that kind of secret guilt would eat her alive. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
The people of the state of California versus Monica Cementelli in case number BA 452-97502. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Monica Cementelli, guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A. A felony is charged in count 1 of the indictment.
In California, we've got Monica Cementilli's sentencing scheduled for 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You may remember she was convicted earlier this year in the stabbing death of her husband, famous hairstylist Fabio Cementilli. In Connecticut, we've got testimony resuming at 10 a.m. Eastern in what we're calling the Preppy Party murder trial for Raul Valley. He is on trial for the fatal stabbing of teenager James McGrath. And in New Hampshire, we've got Jason Levesque from the Bad Blood shooting trial sentenced today. He was acquitted of second-degree murder charges, but convicted of assault in the shooting of his neighbor, Cal Violetti. That's going to get underway at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And we have some breaking news for you this morning. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan breaking his silence on Karen Reed's verdict. And opening statements is first to obtain Brennan's statement. It reads, quote, "I am disappointed in the verdict and the fact that we could not achieve justice for John O'Keefe and his family. District Attorney Michael Morrissey appointed me, giving me full discretion to independently assess the case and follow the evidence no matter where it led. After an independent and thorough review of all the evidence, I concluded that the evidence led to one person and only one person. Neither the closed federal investigation nor my independent review led me to identify any other possible suspect or person responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. The campaign of intimidation and abuse that has been waged, funded, and promoted in public and on social media is the antithesis of justice. If this type of conduct becomes commonplace, it will threaten the integrity of our judicial system, affecting both victims and criminally accused. We cannot condone witness abuse, causing participants to worry for their own safety or that of their families. It is my hope that with the verdict, the witnesses and their families will be left alone. The harassment of these innocent victims and family members is deplorable and should never happen again in a case in this Commonwealth. My heartfelt condolences to the O'Keefe family and faith that over the coming years, they will find peace and closure." Hank Brennan, what a brilliant attorney and crusader for justice. He deserves to be highly commended for his courage and the masterful job he did seeking justice for John O'Keefe. Let's bring in our power panel to get some reaction to Hank Brennan's statement. I want to welcome in John DePietro. He covered the show start to finish. He's a nationally known radio host and the creator of Road Patrol Live. Also, we've got former prosecuting attorney Tommy Pope, famously put away Susan Smith. He's in the private sector now, also a state lawmaker in South Carolina. And we have high-profile criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Mario Gallucci with us from New York. Good morning to you all. Let's get your reactions, please, to Hank Brennan's statement. I just want to kind of go around the room here and get your thoughts on what he had to say after this verdict. John, let me begin with you, please.
You know, Julie, and obviously that's the first time I'm seeing it. Everyone else is seeing it. I'm very glad he put it out. He did as good a job as anyone could, do. I'm glad he talked about the exhaustive efforts he went to, that he felt it all led to one person. But this also comes back to, I'm glad he also touched on how these witnesses, and they're coming under fire, and anyone that's talking and speaking out is coming under fire. And I also want to caution people right now, there are people, it's very dangerous rhetoric that's out there of we have to search for the real killers. And I know we're going to talk about that jury interview that Vinny did. And I find actually a lot of things she's saying very troubling, where she keeps bringing it back to the house, and she's mentioning, Nicole Albert and Brian Albert, and we need to find out this is all dangerous rhetoric. Hank Brennan put together a solid case. He actually, to me, proved his case. You even have the juror saying, I think she touched him, which to me is the new spin of Karen saying, I didn't hit him. Now you have a juror saying, I think she may have touched him, but not hit him. That must be very difficult. Hank Brennan, it should be head held high. He knew what was on, what was at stake here. And I think people really need to just finally really understand there's a lot at stake here, the way this whole thing went down and how the other side, the Karen Reed side is actually reacting, celebrating, and just their general demeanor right now. It's very, very damaging and to the system.
Right, John. Hank Brennan, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's a hero. He's a hero for those victims. He fought the good fight. It's not easy to do what he did. And John, I'm glad you mentioned juror number 11 speaking with Court TV. She spoke with Vinnie Politan the other night. Let's take a listen to some of what she said about the taillight evidence.
The theory I have, like, if she back up and maybe hit something, a curb or him, or some people in the jury raised the question, maybe he he was mad and he could have thrown the glass on the tail light and break it. 34 Fairview and the police department is very close. It was time enough for someone to just show up and drop a piece of tail light at the scene.
What did you think of the...
Okay, so that just was a little bit of a clip of it. Tommy Pope, let me go to you next, please. Your reaction to Hank Brennan's statement, please.
I thought Hank was spot on. I think it was a slip of the tongue, Julie, but when you introduced John, you said he covered the show from beginning to end, and that's what it was. And I think what concerns me, I mean, we see this in high-profile cases, but it normally takes place outside the courtroom. This somehow invaded the courtroom, and I mean, I think Hank was spot on. You've got to respect the jury and their decision-making, because we're all part of the system, and if we quit respecting the jury, the system fails. So he's spot on with that, but I like what he went on to say, because I really think it's terrifying that you can orchestrate and get these crowds out front, because the fact that the jurors started with the, because they never really hit the conspiracy thing like they did the first trial, but the fact that that juror just said, well, somebody from the police station could have brought it over there, that tells me she's hearing the rhetoric that has been ginned up outside the courtroom. I'm not saying during the trial necessarily, but somehow it just surprises me you would find that independently. If that's the case, then she believes everybody in every case, they ginned up the speeding charge, they ginned up everything. And so this verdict, I respect it too, but it's sickening. And the little signals and the smiles and the laughs, a man is dead. And I'm pretty sure this drunk lady caused it. Whether she did it intentionally or not, she did it. But now she's going to end up being a social media star or a reality star, and a family's left to suffer. So I'm with you, Julie. God bless the family going through another trial. But, the burden's different in a civil case. And I mean, just the video we're seeing now, I mean, it's ridiculous. But they won, so they get the benefit of enjoying it.
Tommy, I love your analysis. Especially appreciate the part where you said this campaign invaded the courtroom. We talk a lot about the circus outside, the charade, how that can't affect what goes on in the jury process. And there's a big question. I'm in agreement with you, Tommy. A big question as to whether this jury was tainted, whether that pool was tainted from the outset because of what's gone on in this community. Mario Gallucci, last but certainly not least here on our power panel, want to get your reaction to Hank Brennan's statement and your thoughts, please.
So I agree with everybody on the panel. This is typical gaslighting. You brought this up last week in your opening statement, and this is going on more and more in these high-profile cases. The use of social media is increased. The fact that we are now having to address social media, it's going right into what I do for jury selection now. I address social media right from the get-go, just to make sure that, this doesn't interfere in the courtroom. I've tried cases that I've won that I was like, wow, what trial was this jury watching? And I've tried cases that I've lost and said the same thing. So you got to stand by the verdict. But, more and more social media is playing a large, large role of what's going on in the courtroom.
All right, Mario, I'm sure Hank Brennan knows that he's such a seasoned trial attorney, as you all know. He's a defense attorney, a high-profile defense attorney, represented Whitey Bulger. He's had a great career. He did this willingly, doing what's right, to seek justice. I'm sure he knows, like you said, every trial attorney knows sometimes you lose cases you should win, and you win cases you should lose. It's just the way it goes. You gentlemen know that, and in my view, this is a case that should have been won by the Commonwealth. I believe Hank Brennan proved it, not just beyond a reasonable doubt, but beyond all doubt. I don't know where we ever have seen a homicide prosecution where it's proved down to the minute when the event happened. He proved down to the minute, 12:32 a.m. That was remarkable. So when we're hearing jurors say, oh, well, I thought there was reasonable doubt. Really? Was it reasonable? But, you know, it's their verdict. They've got to live with it. It wasn't, you know, our case. And John DePietro, I want to ask you about some of the people who have had to live with this case only because of their proximity and relationships to John O'Keefe, the Alberts, the McCabe's. They sat down with ABC News. I know you saw the interview. We have a little clip from it. Let's take a look.
You do realize for this conspiracy to be true, it would take 30 to 50 people. You'd have to have multiple cops on 2 different police departments, multiple civilians, the medical examiner, firemen, EMTs, you name it. That's how preposterous and silly this is.
You know, I love that interview. And John, I have to tell you, and this is something you know well from covering this case, and being someone who's, you know, always been on a quest for the truth and justice and sticking to the facts and getting, you know, unwarranted attacks. You know, I've experienced it as well and tried to be silenced. It didn't work for either of us. You know, we kept speaking. But I heard Brian Albert say there was a blueprint. He said there was a blueprint that he said that Karen Reed and her team, whatever you want to call it, PR machine, advocacy team, whatever it is, the blueprint was to destroy the witnesses, destroy their credibility, ruin their lives, so they wouldn't come forward. And we hear Hank Brennan saying in his statement, think about how this is the antithesis of justice. If there is campaigning done outside the courtroom to ruin people's lives and intimidate them so that justice can't happen, where will we be in America? And then same goes for members of the media who were just there to report the facts, tell the stories, and then to get attacked for doing their job. I'd love your thoughts on all of this, John.
You know, Julie, I think Nicole Albert even summed it up. Why would someone come forward to testify in a murder trial in Massachusetts? Why would people get involved? No one protects you. I think people need to understand, we're not talking about inside the courtroom where they throw out a third-party culprit. We're talking about an orchestrated campaign, leaked all their names from grand jury testimony, and then a concerted effort. This is where they live. This is where this one lives. Or you camp out. Let's show you where they all are, and let's just keep the pressure and make their life living hell. And I thought it was, you know, they have been under attack this entire time, but it's really ramped up the past couple of days since, you know, the verdict came out. But it's an element of dehumanize, go after them, convince people that these people are not worth basic respect.
Mm-hmm. You're so right, John. You know, I feel like we could all keep talking. I know we're out of time, but I sure hope that good people start standing up, protecting these innocent people. And we certainly saw that with Hank Brennan. My God, what an incredible job he did with this prosecution, and should hold his head up high. John DePietro, we have to let you go. Incredible reporting. You were one of the very courageous ones, speaking up, speaking out, always making sure that John O'Keefe was at the forefront of this story. Thank you for that. Tommy Pope and Mario Gallucci are coming with us. Please do the same at home. Here's what we have coming up here this morning for you on Opening Statements.
Was it a crash? I mean, the bike looked, the way it was laying, it kind of looked like it, but there's not really that much damage to the bike. That's the thing.
Lion?
Yeah, it was just like lion.
Was there no lion?
I didn't see anything that would indicate.
Barry Morphew arrested again for the killing of his wife, Suzanne. The new details might shock you. We'll talk about it next. And the government's case for Diddy's sex trafficking trial winding down. They could rest today. We're taking a closer look at his personal assistant's testimony. Was this baby face a drug mule? That's next.
The Court TV podcast will return.
You know, if Mr. Morphew didn't have the resources, he could be wrongfully convicted. And that's a statement about our justice system.
That was Barry Morphew's former attorney after he walked out of a courthouse holding hands with his daughters back in 2022. I remember that moment. How about you? Well, now we got another big moment, don't we? Brand new development as Barry Morphew is indicted again, accused again of his wife Suzanne's murder. She vanished in 2020.
The grand jury has indicted Barry Morphew on the single count of murder in the first degree. Law enforcement, the Chaffee County community, and Colorado as a whole has never stopped fighting for justice for Suzanne.
You may recall the first-degree murder charges that were filed previously were dropped back in May of 2021. Now, Suzanne's remains were found in 2023 rather, in a shallow grave. Her autopsy showing this was a homicide, and there were animal tranquilizers in her system. Barry, her husband, has maintained his innocence. He was out on bond for quite some time. He's just been rearrested. He was rearrested in Arizona. Bond set at $3 million now. So he's going to need to be extradited to Colorado, if that hasn't already happened, to face these charges now. But will these charges stick the second time around? Let's talk about that. Let's bring back in our incredible legal eagles, Tommy Pope and Mario Gallucci. All right, gentlemen, what do you say? Mario, will this second time be successful?
So this time you have a body, this time you have an autopsy, and this time the autopsy reveals that there was BAM in her system. BAM is an animal tranquilizer. The husband has a deer farm, I believe, and he uses animal tranquilizers. So if you follow that path, 1 and 1 equals, he's probably responsible for it. I'm sure there's additional evidence that we're unaware of at this point. I know there was some text messages brought up the first time that he was indicted for the murder, but now you have new evidence. You have new strong evidence. So this one's going to trial, or he's taking a plea.
Right. A great analysis, Mario. I'm so glad you brought up the BAM, the tranquilizers. I want to pick your brain more about that in a moment. Tell me, I want to get your thoughts first on just this second indictment, if you think second time around will be successful.
Well, we just spoke about a case I hope we're going to quit talking about that had a second time around. But, it's always difficult. But what I was had seen on actually Court TV's site was, there were some issues with the previous prosecutor. It sounded like a small jurisdiction. It sounded like she was in over her head. I assume from the press conference they have a new prosecutor now. The prosecutor's got enough work because you get cases brought in every day. So you normally don't go looking to prosecute old stuff if you can't prove it. And so I go with Mario that I believe that there must be evidence, there must be sufficient that they're comfortable in doing it. I think the biggest thing you want to do is make sure none of the taint from the previous conduct and the dismissal and all that, which wouldn't be admissible, but it may be back out there in the public, and maybe he's going to start a social media campaign, but focused on the evidence, I got to believe, the prosecution wouldn't be moving forward, particularly with an old case, if you didn't have the evidence, as Mario delineated, to move forward.
You're so right, Tommy. I want to turn to what Mario brought up a few moments ago. I'm so glad he did the BAM, this deer tranquilizer. And let's go back in time to this YouTube clip. This is a few years before Suzanne, I'm sorry, strike that. Barry Morphew posting this YouTube video, pleading for help. This is at the time Suzanne initially went missing. Here we go.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
Okay, so he obtained these prescriptions for BAM, this animal tranquilizer, while he lived in Indiana. This is before his family went to Colorado in 2018. He told investigators, according to the police working the case, that he used the drug to tranquilize deer. Just like Mario said, he was a deer farmer back in Indiana, and he said that was his explanation for the drug. Seemed innocent enough, right? Well, maybe wrong, because this brand new indictment says, quote, prescription records show that when Suzanne Morphew disappeared, only one private citizen living in that entire area of the state of Colorado had access to BAM. And who was that? Barry Morphew. Oh boy, so investigators have done some work tracing who may have had that drug, and they said their investigation found it was just him. Yikes. Mario Gallucci, what do you think about that?
It goes back to what I just said. You know, BAM is not a normal drug you would find in a household. It's not a normally prescribed drugs that a human would take. It's a very tiny portion of the population that would even need it. And he fits into that tiny portion of the population. And now you join that up with the fact that there was some marital discord going on. There were text messages indicating that that was going on. And now she disappears shortly after that. And now they find a body 3 years later, 4 years later, and it has, you know, the drug BAM within it. So there's only one way it got in there. Either she took it or he gave it to her.
Mm-hmm. Good point, Mario. You say that right if you're the prosecutor, Tommy. Did she help herself to the deer tranquilizer? Come on now. Tommy, what do you say?
It reminds me of things. One, when he's doing the video, you know, it reminded me of Susan, you know, begging for Michael and Alex to come back the whole time, you knowing exactly where they're at. Two, the BAM and the fact that it's only, you know, within the state of Colorado, one of the few that had it. It reminds me of the early DNA days. And I had a murder case, and you know, the numbers were smaller than the percentage numbers. They'd say one, you know, in X number to have this profile. And I remember the number just happened to be the same as like the population of our area at the time. And so to the jury, I told them, so it's either this man sitting here or a guy that, and you go through the list, that had the white card, that had the access to the house, that had all things, or in this case, had the BAM and had the opportunity and perhaps had the motive. And so I think it's really set up strong from what we're hearing now to have a good case. You don't have to prove he injected it. Ultimately, if you've narrowed down, it's kind of reversed beyond a reasonable doubt. You're narrowing down everything else that's out there, and it points to one conclusion, and that's the guy sitting over here in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent points, Tommy. We'll leave it there for just a moment. We're going to continue the conversation about this. Tommy, Mario, refill your coffee. After the break, we're going to talk more about this case. And guess what? We're going to talk about the victims here. We're going to talk about Suzanne Morphew and those beautiful daughters that this couple shares. What will their stand be on this? That's next. And we've got Diddy, personal assistant, taking the stand in his federal sex trafficking trial. We'll hear the testimony together through the magic of AI.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back to Opening Statements. We're shining the spotlight now on victim Suzanne Morphew, now that her husband Barry has been indicted again for her murder. It's been 5 years since she vanished on Mother's Day, and 2 years since her remains were discovered. Her two beautiful daughters have stood by their dad throughout all of this. This is some video around the time of that first arrest. So who should the girls believe now? Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson reports.
Where is it? Where's the bike? Oh, it's right there. Where was it? It was like just right down here in this little embankment.
8:46 p.m. Sunday, May 10th, 2020. 53-year-old Barry Morphew arrives at the scene where his wife, Suzanne Morphew's bike and helmet were found about a mile from their house by police. It was Mother's Day, but her daughters were away on a camping trip, and Barry told police that he had spent the day working on a job north of Denver in Broomfield, Colorado. Barry owned a landscaping business, and Suzanne was a stay-at-home mother who was being treated for cancer. The couple lived in Maysville, Colorado. Suzanne's disappearance quickly became a missing persons case. On May 5th, 2021, almost a year after she vanished, Suzanne's husband Barry was arrested and charged with her murder.
The investigation is still ongoing. Suzanne, her body has not been found.
According to the arrest affidavit, the Morphew's marriage was falling apart. She was having an affair and believed that he was cheating too. The week before she disappeared, she texted him that she was done with him and they had to resolve their situation civilly. But in the spring of 2022, days before his scheduled trial, prosecutors dropped Barry's charges without prejudice. The judge had thrown out the potential testimony of several key witnesses because of alleged discovery violations. And without Suzanne's body, prosecutors said they could not move forward with the trial.
Barry and his daughters are relieved, but they're sad because they too want to know where Suzanne Morphew is.
In May 2023, a year after the charges were dismissed, he and his daughters sat down with Good Morning America to discuss the possibility of future charges.
Well, I was innocent the first time they arrested me, so I'm sure it's possible. But I don't have anything to worry about. I've done nothing wrong.
More than 3 years after Suzanne Morphew went missing, investigators found her remains in a shallow grave. Police discovered her while investigating an unrelated missing persons case. The site, a desert field of sagebrush near Moffett, a town 45 miles south of Suzanne and Barry's home in Maysville, not part of the original search locations. Barry Morphew's attorney said that he and his daughters were shocked by the news of her discovery and point to the fact that there is no GPS or cell phone evidence that places Barry near Moffett the weekend Suzanne disappeared.
That was Matt Johnson reporting there. So let's talk about the victims here. Suzanne Morphew and her daughters. They're victims as well. They've lost their beautiful mother. And now I can't imagine being in this impossible position where the only parent living that they have is now the person accused of their mother's death. Barry Morphew, of course, maintaining his innocence. He's cloaked in the presumption of it. What are the daughters going to do as the case progresses through trial? Let's bring back in attorney and former prosecutor Tommy Pope, and welcome in private investigator, someone who's a military veteran and a veteran officer of the NYPD as well, Manuel Gomez. Manuel, let me begin with you here. You know, when we think about the victims, and I want to place the focus there, not so much on the investigation, although I know you have great insight to offer in that regard. You're also very compassionate when it comes to victims and justice for the truth. Your thoughts on the children, the Morphew children in all this?
First of all, my condolences out to the family, okay? And second, when it comes to the children having to relive this nightmare again, you know, it's unconscionable. But the fact of the matter is, you know, Julie, the prosecutor messed up in the last case, okay? And unfortunately, I kind of got the flavor like the Karen Reed case, where the cop was corrupt in this case, and in the former case, the prosecutor screwed up so bad that they fired them. So this case is extremely tainted, and I know it's going to be something for a jury because they're going to see what the prosecutor did the last time. And so I think the daughters right now are at a crossroad, and they're not sure if Dad is really guilty, unfortunately.
Yeah, great points, because you wouldn't want to believe that if that's the case. We don't know. Only he knows the truth. Tommy Pope, dovetailing off of what Manuel just shared, thinking back to why the prosecutors had to withdraw, the judge was mad at them. I know you recall there was a discovery violation. The judge was saying, well, certain witnesses can't be introduced because these violations were so bad, it's unfair to the other side. If justice isn't carried out, how much responsibility do you think those prosecutors may bear in this?
I mean, there's no excuse for discovery violations. I remember when I first got elected, my predecessor, we were just starting DNA cases, and it was difficult. You know, you had to go to the labs, and the defense would want to tour the lab, and they couldn't. Obviously, it would taint it. And so the prosecutor before me just kind of didn't do anything. So we had DNA cases that the evidence was thrown out, and we had to prosecute it with other, you know, like fiber evidence, serology evidence. But it is concerning, but I don't think it'll be fatal. Again, from what we've heard, you know, the last segment, they've got a package together. The new prosecutor feels strong enough about it. But as Manuel said, you're going to end up having that taint you're going to have to deal with it somehow. I mean, hopefully, if it was a discovery violation, if you timely provide it now, I don't know that the judge would necessarily prohibit those witnesses this time. And so, hopefully it's a semi-clean slate. It's kind of like cleaning the chalkboard. It's never totally clean, but hopefully it's open and they can start. As far as the daughters, again, not to always talk about the Susan Smith case, but David Smith stood right by Susan until the day she was arrested. And so, and he believed her and supported her even when they questioned her. And I see the kind of similarities with these daughters. They're sitting there, what are they going to do? Cast their dad aside? And what if he isn't guilty? And so I think they're doing what they have to do. But I mean, they've lost their mother and they may lose their father, but that would be justice if he in fact took her life.
Excellent points, Tommy. Manuel, let me turn to you now, please. Some of the facts we know about the dynamic between Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew, the victim. So Barry was the last person to see her alive, told police she was going on a bike ride, told authorities their marriage was, quote, the best marriage. But we know that Suzanne was allegedly having an affair. She told her friends that she thought that Barry might have stepped out on the marriage too, and that she conveyed to her friends that she told him she wanted a divorce, that was going to be it for their marriage. This is right before she goes missing. As an investigator, Manuel, your thoughts on what might have happened to Suzanne?
The fact of everything you just said gives the reason to have the intent to make her disappear. And also, this guy was well thought out. Okay, he made sure that his phone showed no record, no location, had it off, highly questionable. I mean, come on. He's running a landscaping business and your phone is off for the duration that it was? I don't think so. I don't believe him. And second, the fact that they came up with the rifle and that there's the combination of tranquilizers that he was involved with, that stuff, which goes back to proving, what one of the causes was for her murder. So, you know what? I think, like I said again, this is going to be a difficult case, but I think the prosecutors got a really strong shot this time if they play ball correctly, all right, and make sure there's no Brady violations or anything else. I think they're going to hang this guy out.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Manuel. I think this BAM information is going to be a game changer. The fact that they traced him to be the only person in that region of the state with it, and then also the fact that it's in her system. What a unique way to die. So we'll leave it there for now, and of course report on when we learn that he's back in Colorado and what comes next in his process, pleading not guilty. And of course, we're thinking of the victims here on this show. Tommy Pope, we'll see you in about 15 minutes. You're coming back for some Court TV Live with us. Manuel's coming with us next. After the break, we're taking you to New York. We're going to listen to some testimony from Diddy's personal assistant.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back to Opening Statements. Let's talk about what is tipping the scales of justice. Well, today we could see a big tip as the government may rest its case in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. And the jury heard testimony from a witness nicknamed the baby-faced drug mule. Could he tip the scales? So he was Diddy's former assistant. Brennan Paul is his name, told the jury about his mission to always keep Diddy happy, saying the defendant told his assistants they should operate like they are SEAL Team 6. Well, on direct, Paul described his daily operations, mostly corralling drugs for the once powerful music executive.
After you obtained drugs for Mr. Combs, what typically did you do with them?
Either gave them directly to him or put them in his Gucci pouch.
What is the Gucci pouch?
It's just a place where we would keep drugs.
Who told you to put the drugs in the Gucci pouch?
Something I learned from former assistants.
Who did the Gucci pouch belong to?
Mr. Combs.
Where did Mr. Combs keep the Gucci pouch?
Kept it in a backpack, or he kept it in his room or on his person.
Which staff members, if any, handled the Gucci pouch?
Assistants.
Did the security ever handle the Gucci pouch?
Not that I'm aware of.
Under what circumstances did the assistants handle the Gucci pouch?
Just whenever he'd ask for it.
Let's talk about this a little bit. Was he a drug mule? Let's bring in Mario Gallucci, someone who practices at that courthouse all the time in New York, and Manuel Gomez. He's in New York as well. Black Ops, Private Investigations, now formerly NYPD, and one of our military veterans. We thank you for your service, Manuel. Okay, so Mario, you know what I kept thinking about this Brendan Paul is, when we think of drug mules, you know, I think a lot of people think of big quantities of dope that are being moved. And we have just a teeny tiny amount of coke that he got pinched with. What do you think?
Oh, I'm actually going to be in the Southern District this afternoon with another case.
Nice.
So Brennan Paul, what the prosecution has to do here is it's a RICO case. So in order to prove RICO, your viewers need to understand that this is like a mob case, like they would think of. So what they need to show is that Diddy ran an organization, and in that organization he had many assistants who did illegal activities to further that organization's purpose. So the purpose here would be for the freak-offs, for the Wild King Knights, and that Brendan Paul now was the person who was assistant, and he was in charge of getting the drugs for Mr. Diddy's personal use, and also the drugs that were given to the people that participated in the Wild King Knights and the freak-offs. So this is just one way of them showing that this was not one isolated incident of a couple that had just a relationship that's different than most, that this was actually an organization that was developed in order to sustain these freak-offs and these Wild King Knights.
You explained that so well, Mario. Manuel, I want to ask you your thoughts on Brendan Paul. Is he a drug mule, in your opinion?
I think he is a drug mule, but the problem I have with Brendan Paul is one thing. One, he has the intent to want to lie because they're giving him immunity for the drugs they found on him. So the defense team is going to say, hey, yeah, look at the story this guy just said. He's getting all the drugs for P. Diddy. He's cleaning out the rooms for P. Diddy. He's facilitating the needs to make the freak-off exciting. The problem is that this guy has the intent. Look at him. He's got a baby face. He's thin. He's going to be a jail's true dream come true. They're going to love this guy in jail. And you know what? He made a deal so he wouldn't go to jail. And the defense team is going to say this guy's not credible. But is his testimony damning? Extremely. But I believe that's what they're going to go with.
Yeah, very well said, Manuel. Yeah, I mean, you know, in cases like this one, Mario, you know, to that point, Manuel, I'm so glad you brought up the immunity. We've seen multiple witnesses needing immunity to give testimony. Mario, how common is that when you have a RICO case?
It's in most RICO cases, witnesses are getting immunity, and it's a defense attorney's dream. Once you get a cooperation agreement and a person's testifying under immunity, you get to go through their whole. Remember, credibility is always an issue. So now you're going to go through this whole person's criminal record. You're going to go through the circumstances where he was arrested with the cocaine at the airport. You're going to say you would have went to jail for such and such a time, and now you're not because you testified here. You made an agreement with the government. As a result of that, you go home.
It was so well explained. We'll leave it there for now. We're going to be talking more Diddy throughout the day on Court TV Live. Mario, we got to let you get to that courthouse where the Diddy Hayes case is going on. You've got a case to win this afternoon. Thank you so much, Manuel Gomez. Big thanks to you for all the great insight as well. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.